Retirement Lifestyle Show is finally back with a new episode. I'm your co host, Adrian Nicholson, and it's great to be back. For all you listeners and viewers, I hope you had a fantastic summer. That's going to be one of our topics today. I'm going to talk about my East Coast journey from Maine to Miami. I definitely have a lot of great takeaways from you all, whether it's travel, investing. 2 weeks where I had a lot of things that I want to share with you today on today's episode of the Retirement Lifestyle Show. So I'm just going to start right away with Miami because that's where I was going for a conference for work. RTA held its first conference of the year where we heard a lot of different investment ideas, networked with a lot of people from different offices and branches. And it's just a great way to learn from other people, learn new ideas, and understand some of the new investment opportunities that are out there. This time I did it differently, where typically I like to get in the day before the conference. So I'm like, all right, I'll do something a little bit different this year. I will leave the day of the conference. So I flew out of DC, got into Miami around noon, around the time the conference started. And from right there, it was just a lot of fun and a lot of learning. It was definitely a very good time. One of my biggest takeaways, or one things I want to share, and why this is a topic today that I wanted to talk about, is because during the Arte conference, you learn from a lot of different investment companies, a lot of different investment products, services, and specifically alternative investments. And this is something that we talked about previously on our podcast. And I'll give you a little bit of a rundown and definition what alternative investments are. And they are basically, the way I easily describe it is, it's an alternative to stocks, bonds, and cash. This isn't your typical stock that you can go into a public market to purchase, or a bond where you can get that from the United States Treasury or a corporate bond or a CD. So we learned a lot of different alternative investments that are out there. And let me give you more examples of some of the alternative investments or different investment companies and what they had to offer. So I'm just going to give you a list of investments and a list of ideas. This is not recommendation. This is not financial advice. I just wanted you to kind of learn from what I learned going to this conference in Miami and give you an understanding of what alternative investments are, because again, sometimes people think when it comes to investing, it's just stocks, it's bonds, it's cash, mutual funds, exchange rate funds. Those are ones that people are very familiar with. They aren't really familiar with alternative investments, which can be sometimes labeled as private investments, private equities, private markets, alternative investment. So this is something too that I think is going to be a very valuable for you to pull out of this podcast today. So again, I'll just give a list of some of the different alternative investments, private investments that are out there that I learned from in Miami. So there were a lot of different options out there. You had private credit companies, you had private equity companies, you had art companies where you can invest in art. You had real estate companies. There was a lot where you can invest in office space buildings, storage, residential, multifamily. And then another one, there are energy companies out there. You can invest in like oil companies. And this is just a list of investments that are alternative that you can invest in. That's not something typically that you can go ahead and buy right away or that has access to the public. So again, I just want to take a pause here and just kind of summarize everything that was going on, everything that I talked about. So again, I went to my company RTA's conference in Miami, and in that conference, I get to meet all the other advisors, representatives, and people that are affiliated with RTA. We got to connect, network, understand what works for our practices, what direction we're heading into, what are our goals, understanding everything that's kind of going on internally. And then we get to hear from other companies, investment companies, private companies, alternative investment companies, and just see what kind of products and services that they have out there that might be a good opportunity to invest in, or at least understand a little bit more to see if this is maybe a right fit for our clients, our businesses, and overall enhancing performance within our portfolios that we use. So again, I just went over a list of different alternative investments out there where you can invest in art, you can invest in wine, you can invest in real estate, you can invest in energy. And again, these are not companies that are open to the public. And one thing that sometimes is the reason why some people can't invest in these certain type of companies or funds or alternative investments or private investments is because they have certain standards for an investor when trying to invest in their products or their service or their companies. Some criteria that you have to meet is sometimes you have to be an accredited investor. And what an accredited investor is somebody that has a high income or has a certain level of net worth or liquid investable assets, where if they meet that criteria, then they are allowed to invest within that alternative investment, private company, private market, fund, whatever it means. So you have to have certain asset levels or a certain income where you have to meet a certain criteria to even invest in a certain alternative investment, private market, private company, or private fund. So right there, that may be a reason why, all right, that's something too where I haven't heard of alternative investments or didn't know I had to meet a certain criteria. Again, not only is it not available to the public, but you have to meet a certain criteria or standard to begin to invest in there. So something that's interesting that has been getting a lot of news and a lot of information out there is, again, private investments and alternative investments are becoming a little bit more well known. And one thing too that's top of mind, that's a headline right now, is this going to be made available in people's Ks, qualified retirement plans, whatever they use in their employment right now to fund their retirement? Alternative investments may be something that people might have more access to, where they had more stricter regulations around it in the past. So that being said, a common one that has shown up is crypto. Will people be able to invest in crypto assets within their 401k and their qualified retirement plans in the future? So this is something that's getting a lot of headlines. So as a financial planner and somebody that deals a lot with managing portfolios, giving financial advice, looking at different investments, doing a lot of analysis, looking at stocks, bonds, cash, and now what we're talking about, alternative investments, it really comes down to position sizing. How much are we allocating to each sector? And overall, is the investment right for my risk tolerance? Is it right for my time horizon? Is it right for my overall portfolio and where my investments are structured as of today? Because alternative investments, they can sometimes be more risky than stocks, bonds, and cash. They might have certain standards too, that where if you invest in this alternative investment, you might not be able to sell within a certain time frame. They're not liquid. Sometimes an alternative investments can be called very illiquid. So that's something too where you have to understand that when you're doing your research or looking into this space. It's not like a stock or a bond or cash, where cash is very readily available. You can do whatever you want with it. Stocks, you can sell, get your money back within a day and then find something else. A bond, you can wait for it to mature, or you could cash it out depending on what the principal is and get that money right away. Alternative investing, there might not be that easy liquidity out there. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, and that's something you really need to understand as a component of it. So breaking down kind of the things that I touched about for alternative investments is that, again, you have to have a certain standard or criteria of being an accredited investor or meet some type of guidelines before you can even start investing in that space. Second, understand the liquidity or illiquidity that comes with the alternative investment in space. And then the third one as well, private markets, private investments, more so in this space, sometimes the information is not readily available to you. They might tell you what the investment does, what is historically it has done, certain criteria or standards that to this investment space, that might not have a lot of information than your typical publicly traded company has, where we know every quarter it has to make an announcement, its financials are open to the public. Sometimes private investments, such as private equities, it does not provide some of that readily available information that maybe people are used to in that public space. And that's something also you need to understand. So I definitely gave a big rundown on what the alternative space is and what it's like investing in alternative investments. And that's one of the big things that I was spending a lot of my time in Miami, is just learning from all these different companies. Like I mentioned, it's real estate companies, art companies, energy companies, private equity companies, private credit. So I was definitely doing a lot of research and seeing which ones could be a right fit, which ones I might have to do a little bit more research in, just to see what opportunities could lie for me in the future with that. So I definitely did a lot of just meeting other people, seeing what type of investments are out there. And it's just a really good learning experience in total that I thought was very valuable to share with you today. Because again, this is something that you might want to learn about and understand more, where again, maybe you're somebody that's like, you know what, Adrian, I just want to stick to bonds and stocks or cash. That's perfectly okay. But understanding all the different areas that are out there that you can invest in is very crucial, because again, sometimes there are opportunities that might not fit or you might not like in the alternative investment space, but you don't want to deter that from you from understanding or researching or learning about more in the future, because again, it can be a very good complement to a portfolio. Because one thing that alternative investments can be a very benefit to a portfolio is they're very uncorrelated sometimes to stocks and bonds. What I mean by this is sometimes stocks, they move in a certain direction. If there's a lot of volatility in the markets, or if the markets are doing very well and going up, you might see a lot of different stocks and different industries or sectors moving very similarly, moving on that upward trend. It also could be the opposite, like we saw in April when we got those tariff headlines that shook up the market. A lot of stocks were all following the same direction. They were going down. So what that uncorrelation does with alternative investments, since they're alternative investments, they typically don't have that stock price or that day-to-day price that you can follow to see how it's doing. They typically sometimes give their price on a quarterly or annual basis. So with that being said, if you see the market starting to turn down, or your stock or your investment is going down on a daily basis, your alternative investment, although its price may be fixed for that quarter because we're waiting for more information to see what the price will be in the future, it has that uncorrelation where it's very specific to what that company is doing. Whether if the stock or the public markets are going down, that private investment may be staying the same, or when they come out with their quarterly reports or their annual reports, you might see an uptrend or an uptick in the price. So that's where that diversification and that uncorrelation could be very key and very beneficial for your portfolio. It's another way to diversify. And that's something that we've talked a lot about on the Retirement Lifestyle Show. Diversification is key, especially when it comes to equities. We think, oh, diversifying by buying multiple different companies, diversifying by different sectors or different industry within my equity space. Now we're taking it a little bit in a high level advanced step forward by saying, not only should you diversify with stocks, bonds, and cash, maybe we need to start looking, if you meet certain criteria as an accredited investor, long time horizon, it fits your risk capacity and your risk tolerance. We bring in alternative investments to see if that's something that can complement your portfolio and help you achieve the returns that you want on a greater scale and into the future. And that's one of the biggest takeaways I did get. And that's something too that I think is very valuable, which we talked before about in the previous episodes of the Retirement Lifestyle Show. So it was definitely a very good time. It was really nice going down there, seeing the beaches, seeing all the different cool places. It was just a very good vibe there, and I liked it a lot. My fellow co-host Roshan, a memorable moment we had was we went to this one place that was really cool. It was like a restaurant bar, and it had like an elevated surface where people were doing these songs, singing, dancing. It was a really just cool atmosphere, very different than what I can get here in like the DMV. So it was really cool just seeing that culture and that music aspect of Miami, which was a lot of fun. They had really great Spanish music, really good food there. So it was a really good time. The weather definitely wasn't ideal, definitely rained a few times while we were there, but Roshan and I, we definitely kept busy with the conference and just seeing all the different restaurants and shows that were down there in Miami. It was definitely a very cool time. And our company, Arte, they had this Havana night, which was really cool. They have these cigars, this DJ playing music. They had really cool food there, like paella, beef, and all this things that was just made it a really good, not only learning experience, but also like a fun time to be able to just close off the end of the summer, which was a really good time. So yeah, I definitely learned a lot in Miami. It was definitely a very good time, definitely packed time too, because I was traveling the day of the conference. I was there that day, spent a whole day with the conference, and the next day I flew out. And then for the fun part of the podcast as well, this is called the East Coast Journey. Before I even did the Miami conference, my family, my parents, and my brother, we all went up to Maine with my wife because her brother was getting married, and that was like a really good time. It was a fantastic time. It was the first time too my parents came up to Maine. Some of the highlights there when we were traveling up into Maine, we definitely ate a lot of seafood. We went tubing on a river, the Saco River ride. That was always a good time I look forward to. And it was just really good just taking some time off. So this is the Retirement Lifestyle Show. I'm your co-host, Adrian Nicholson, and we'll be back.
Schedule a conversation with Roshan, Adrian, or Eric today at retirementlifestyleshow.com. Roshan and Eric are certified financial planner practitioners. They, along with Adrian, are investment advisor representatives and serve clients across the U.S. with financial planning and investment advice through Arate Wealth. If you found this show helpful, gained knowledge, or enjoyed the time you spent with us, tell your friends and leave us a 5-star review. This will help others discover the show. To access our show notes, to download any of the tools mentioned in today's podcast, to ask us a question, or to schedule a conversation, go to retirementlifestyleshow.com. All opinions expressed by podcast hosts and guests are solely their own. While based on information they believe is reliable, neither Arate Wealth nor its affiliates warrants its completeness or accuracy, nor do their opinions reflect the opinion of Arate Wealth. This podcast is for general informational purposes only and should not be regarded as specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Before making any decisions, consult a professional. The show hosts offer investment advice through Arate Wealth Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor, and securities through Arate Wealth Management, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC, and NFA. Finally, our music is The Chance by Jason Shaw and Audionautics. It's part of the YouTube audio library, and it's licensed under a Creative Commons license. I am Ray Voices. Thank you for listening.